It does mean that maybe my profit at the end of the year isn't as big, but the gain that I receive from that is more than that. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It's reimagining the way we do business so that everyone can survive and thrive.
Welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to take action to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works, How to Decide, Believe, and Begin to Live Your Best Life. The concept of making choices in your business so that everyone can survive and thrive is what guides the decision-making of today's guest. Shelley Verlaan was a career accountant until one day a friend suggested that they get together and make soap. Shelley just assumed that her friend kind of knew what she was doing. Turns out that was far from true. But the good news is they both came out of that session unscathed, and Shelley was hooked on soap making. She dove into the R&D, started creating her own line of soap, and sold them at markets for a few years until COVID restrictions shut that down. So what did she do? She went full in and opened up a bricks and mortar store. In this episode, we'll hear about selling at markets, the value and importance of having a business plan, and valuable no-cost or low-cost marketing tips and reminders peppered throughout. Be sure to catch the end of episode takeaways where I focus on how and why to treat your side hustle now as the big, bold, beautiful success you envision it to one day be. Now here is my conversation with the owner of Soapolallie Soapworks, Shelley Verlaan. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you. It's really great to be here with you this morning, Joan.
Anyone who goes to your website and watches your Our Story video will not only see your gorgeous store and the products, but also get a glimpse into the surrounding area where you live. Tell us a bit about that, because I know it's an integral part of how and why you do what you do.
It absolutely is. The photographs or the pictures that you're seeing on the website is of the Kingfisher Interpretive Center. And it's a Chinook hatchery, which I'm involved in. And it's on the Shuswap River in close to Enderby, BC. And the thing about the Shuswap River, I also live on it. And when I was growing up, I lived on the North Thompson River. And the North Thompson River and the Shuswap River form, as people may or may not know, to the Fraser River, which is the river that flows by the home of my ancestral family.
Lovely. Tell us about your career as an accountant.
Well, it started quite a long time ago. I've never had any other job, actually. I've always been involved in accounting, bookkeeping, accounts payable, accounts receivable. I started working like that when I was about 13, and I kept following through that. And I was a late to go to university child or young adult.
Okay.
I think I went about 22. I decided that I needed to get a bit more education and went back and I did a bachelor's in economics and a minor in business. And when I got out, I realized that I wasn't really getting a job.
Okay.
So yeah, with economics, you need to go further. You need to get a master's.
Okay.
And I really wasn't as interested in that as I was business side. So I went to work, and then I started doing my certified management accountant, which is a CPA now, because they're all merged together.
How does an accountant, CPA, number cruncher, get into soap making?
Yeah, so that was interesting. One of my friends said, let's make soap. And I said, well, do you know how? She goes, well, I've made it before. I make it sometimes like once a year. So we did. And I still say to her, it's quite interesting that we still have eyes, because
Why is that?
The lye solution is caustic. And it was kind of flying all over the place. And she didn't really know how much, what kind of scents to put in, how much, or what it should look like, or when it was ready to pour into a mold, or how much that would make, or whether the recipe was good. So we were really flying by the seat of our pants.
And this is the person that was supposed to be showing you how?
Yes.
Okay.
So after that, it's soap making is like cooking, and
Okay.
I love to cook. So I just fell in love with it right away, and I probably watched a few hundred hours of videos on the internet and made about 600 bars of soap in my basement.
Wow. That's a lot of soap. Okay.
It is a lot of soap. And then I didn't know what to do with it. So I started selling it.
Very nice. And where did you start selling it? How did you get word out?
My friends started wanting to buy soap from me. Can you make this for a Christmas gift? You know, I need a gift for this. Can you do that? And I did that. And then I started selling it at the market. And now I'm here.
So how long were you selling at the markets?
I think about 3 years until COVID hit. Like 2020 is during the COVID time.
Ah, and then that shut that down.
It did.
Hmm. What advice would you give to someone selling at markets, whether it be soap or just anything in general? Like to me, they're a great opportunity to test your product and to meet potential customers, get some practice into selling your product and articulating it. It's great to test place, but I'm just wondering if there was any like surprises that you came up against or
I think the hardest times were when the markets were slow
okay.
and you didn't make the sales that you thought you might, or most of the selling at markets is quite rewarding. You get to talk to a lot of people. They have usually quite good music, which I like a lot, and I always ask to have the music right next to me because I enjoy it so well. But I think that I did one market and it was a specialty market.
Mhm.
So I paid quite a bit of money to be at this market, and it was 3 days, and I had prepared a lot of product at Christmas time, and it was a flop.
Oh
I
no.
sold probably I at my regular local markets, Christmas markets, I probably sold in 3 days what I would sell in one day at just one of my small Christmas markets.
Oh my.
So, and the other piece is that soaping is, I think, a lot of people get into it,
Hmm.
and so it's hard to get into a market now. If you're getting into your local markets, they're just a little bit more difficult to get into. And the bigger markets are quite hard to get into unless you know the people that are holding them.
So you mean difficult in terms of like a waiting list to get in as a vendor, you mean?
Yeah, the markets typically have the vendors that they have and that they like. And I think well, not just like, but the ones that are a draw for customers, because
Sure.
that they're all there for the same reason. So
Hmm.
they need to make sure that the vendors that they have are going to draw a big customer base. So they have tried and true, and they may try one or two new people, but they'll have their list of people that they've gone with before, and they'll go with again.
Right. Any suggestions on busting through that?
Just keep trying.
Yeah, exactly. And
Just get to know them, talk to them outside of the market times. Keep showing them your product, keep developing your product, keep developing your influence, keep your social marketing going. Show them that you are engaged otherwise, besides just on the day of.
mhm.
Engagement's really important.
So you're working as an accountant. You have this session with a friend starting making soap. One thing leads to another. You love it. You've got 600 bars in the basement. Start doing markets for a couple of years as a side hustle. At what point did you decide I need to take the next step and jump into an actual brick and mortar store?
In 2017, late in the year, my mom got sick and I had to look after her. So
Mm,
I could not do both things. I was selling a little bit at the market and selling a little bit to my friends. And then that just slowed down a little bit because my mom took a lot of care. But she did pass in 2018. And then I just started doing the markets and picked up two or three along the way. So I was at markets maybe 4 days a week. And then when COVID hit, I just got a sense that they would not open the markets back up for
mm,
artisan sellers. I felt like they were going to keep, the food availability going, but everything else would be closed down. And
Which is
so that
exactly what happened, right?
just exactly what
Yeah.
happened. So
Yeah.
in March, I started making plans to open a store.
Wow.
And I didn't really think twice about it. I had confidence that I could make it work. And I'm in a small town of about 3,500 people, but a catchment area of maybe 7,000 people.
Okay.
And so our rents are low.
Mm.
If, this wouldn't be the same scenario if I was downtown Vancouver, because you'd have to do a lot more thinking on your costs and your economic structure and what you don't want to do. But in
Okay.
a small town, rents are low. So that was, for me, it was like, it's not really that much more than I'm paying it going to all these markets. And I'm setting up and down, and I'm always fighting with the elements. Maybe people are coming, they want more, but they can't, I'm only there for a couple of hours. Yeah. So I got together with my family and said, should I do it? And they're like, yep, you should do it. And so my cousin and I, we got together and we developed a theme for the store, which is cedar, salmon, water, and connectedness. And so I've already given you the water connection, right?
Yes.
So that's what flows past our family's home of Spuzum. But it's always been an important piece. So my great grandmother was a fisher, and I have a photograph of her net fishing on the Fraser River in my store. I have a photograph of my grandmother, who was in two stages of her life, as an elder of about 92 and as a young woman of about 30. So my grandmother was a force to be reckoned with, and she never let anything stop her. She was strong. And the photograph that we have, we are not sure where it was taken, but we think it was probably in New York, because my grandmother liked to travel. And it was taken by one of those photographers that just takes street photographs as people are walking by.
Really?
Yeah, so we got together, my cousin and I, he built all my store structures. It's all cedar, it's all big logs. It's beautiful. And when people walk into the store, they just feel grounded. They feel a sense of calm, and they don't know why, but it just levels off any of the feelings that they were having, any of the ups and downs of emotions. And then we get to talk and we get to share stories.
And you no doubt built it with that intention.
We did. And people say it all the time. They'll be walking out the door, and they'll say to me, I was feeling anxious when I walked into your store, and now I feel good. Wonderful.
Well, it's lovely to see that you have inherited your grandmother's get her done kind of attitude.
Sometimes I think that I'm not sure if that's not thinking about things, or, just not caring. Sometimes I'll step before I think, and not always, but sometimes.
But when that step is caused by our intuition, then it'll work out just fine. Whereas a lot of us overthink things at times, and then we miss the opportunity. But you jumped into the store.
That's true. No, I'm totally with you on that.
What was your biggest surprise in opening up your store location?
My biggest surprise is how well it would do.
Really?
How well it was received by everyone here, by the locals, by the surrounding communities.
As an accountant, did you sit down and say, okay, this is the volume that I was doing at the markets. Now, if I'm going to make this storefront successful, here's the volume I need to be doing?
Absolutely. So I did a very in-depth business plan, and it's probably about, 35 or 40 pages long. And I did market studies, and I did projections and of all the costs and all of the production. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, it's necessary. And I also was very, very lucky to be able to work with a group. It was a project in the Shuswap funded by the federal government. Their name was Sutswaya, and they were in business to help female entrepreneurs in the Shuswap. And they provided me with all of the help I needed at the time I needed it. And it wasn't just a cookie cutter. It was, okay, what do you need? And I needed marketing help. So they helped me to identify who my market was. They helped me to identify what my customer needs were. We went through the whole thing, and it didn't cost me anything.
Wow.
So in the time of COVID, there was definitely money to help people, do the things that they needed help with.
Right.
It still exists today. You just have to find it. And then I was able to get a grant from Launch Online to build my website. And I was also able to access some loan money from All Nations Trust, which is also there to further the Indigenous entrepreneurs.
Right.
So, I've reached out and found the pockets that could help me. And everyone has to do that. They're available. You just have to look for them and find them. Business plans are hard. I had a hard time, like walking through that. And sometimes I felt like, oh, I can't do this. The thing I found the hardest was the marketing piece. And every time I have trouble doing anything or difficulties, it's always in the marketing piece because it's so out of my realm.
Right.
And identifying customers and, thinking about what they would like, that really pushed me hard. And, the pieces that were easy, like the budgeting and, maybe the analytics, that part was all easy. So, somebody else might come into this and just fly through the marketing part. And, that part is easy for them. And they'll struggle with the business side, like the analytics and the budgeting. We're all going to have a piece that is difficult for us to do. But that's where the growth is. That's where getting to know yourself and your business and what you need to know. So,
yes. So often I hear somebody say, well, I would love to do X, Y, or Z, but I can't because I don't have the money. And thinking that is the only way. Well, there's so many other ways. There's trades and barters and grants potentially and loans. But I think the decision to do it has to start first. And then we start looking for ways to make it happen. And you've obviously done a wonderful job at that. In fact, I was going to ask you about your website because you did such a really nice job on it. Very professional looking. Is that something that you built or had built from scratch, or did you use a platform like Shopify? How did that come about?
We are on Shopify, and between three of us, one woman from Tsutsweya, who is a marketing person, did some of the copy for me. And I have a friend who was a programmer before. Doesn't work anymore, but does a lot of work for me. Between him and I, we got the website built, and it was designed around the brand story. So I had a really wonderful young man from Victoria, Justin Avinama is his name, and his company is Brand Stories. So I think it's brandstories.ca. He came out and we just sat. He lit up my store like Hollywood.
Wow.
And we just sat and talked the whole entire day. And then we went out to the interpretive center, and he did what he called his B-roll. And we walked through the forest, and he did some drone footage. And honestly, when we were all done for the day, I had thought I'd said nothing important or nothing good.
Like nothing that he could use.
Nothing that he could use. It's like, I have so many things to say. Why didn't I say those things? But in about 4 weeks, he came back to me with basically the product you see on my website, one edit.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So he's a master. All my credit goes to him.
Lovely. I want to ask you about the business plan. You said it was 35, 40 pages.
It was very in-depth. And I had done a very basic business plan when I started. And then when I wanted to develop a relationship with All Nations Trust, they asked me, they said, can you make a business plan, a presentation plan? And so they sent me a template that they like to see, and it was thorough.
Wow.
It took me 3 months to walk through that, and it took a couple of people working on it. There's a lot of details. There's a lot to do when you're looking at a business plan.
And how valuable do you think that exercise was?
It's invaluable. You must know the pieces in a business plan. They must be very, very clear to you, because if you don't, you're kind of flailing at some point. I budgeted everything, and then I guess one of the big pieces is it's good to make a business plan, but it's also good to go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you go back and you review. Did I meet that? Is that what that looked like? If it didn't look like that, why didn't it look like that? And so I did that also the following year. And every year I make a budget. It's not anywhere near as extensive as that, but I'm always working on learning and developing my social media skills. Again, reaching out and finding resources. The city has hired a young woman that works in community futures in Vernon, and she comes here and she says, ask the businesses, what do you need? And I just grabbed onto her and I said, I need to learn how to use Instagram. And she just walked me through it, and I'm pretty good at it now.
Awesome. You're like, oh, free resource. Yeah, that's in my budget.
Free resource, that's in my budget. I support my local community as much as I can. I do fundraising inside my community. And then I do a video pretty regularly called Business to Business Love, where I go and I highlight another business. And because we're all in this together.
Yes.
We support each other, we grow together, we learn together, and we live together. And it's the only way that local small businesses can make it work, and local communities, and keeping it inside your community. And to me, community is not just about being here in this, geographic region. The world is my community.
Mm-hmm.
But first I serve this one that I'm living in. And additionally, I serve other communities. I buy shea butter from a company called Baraka Shea Butter. Okay. And they are a very, very well-run organization where they support a whole entire village in Ghana. And I know where that comes from. I have a video of women making the shea butter. And so everything, as the best of my ability that I get into the store, I have to know who makes it. I have to know where that money's going. I have to know what it's supporting. And in doing that, I know that another family, another one of my world communities are surviving and thriving as well.
And it's so great as an entrepreneur that you can make those choices, those conscious choices. You got control over that.
And it does mean that maybe my profit at the end of the year isn't as big, but the gain that I receive from that is more than that. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It's reimagining the way we do business so that everyone can survive and thrive.
Excellent vision. And you know that the product going out the door, you feel it in your heart that's the way you want to do business.
Absolutely.
And what an excellent idea that you have in interviewing other businesses in the community. So many win-wins all over that, because you get to see how they're running their operation and making those vital connections within the community as well.
Well, and I love my community.
Yeah. I want to see it thrive. In those earlier days, did you go through a lot of trial and error trying to figure out recipes and what you liked and what you didn't like?
Absolutely. And there were more than enough fails. Failure is part of the process. It's not something you should be afraid of. It's something you should embrace. And I started out with some of the basic recipes, and then just kept adding, changing one thing is basically what it was. Sometimes I, shift it all because I wanted to try completely different, but changing one thing to see what happens, and connecting with as many soap makers as I could I went to a conference down in the States, learned lots doing that. Yeah, and just kept making until I was really happy with the result. And then those are the ones that I started to sell. But I think the one thing that did happen to me when I went from market to store is I really needed to get clear and selective about what I would do, because I now do so many more things than I did when I was selling at the market. I don't just make soap now. I make shampoo bars, I make conditioner bars, I make facial gel serums, I make body butters, I make, salt scrubs, I make shaving soap. I make so many more things.
And this is since you started in the store. And how long have you been in the store now?
Just over 2 years.
Wow.
I had my 2-year anniversary in August.
And have sales scaled up as you anticipated they would?
And more.
Really?
Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Like I said, the support is so strong. And every time I get a new customer in, we love being here. We're coming back.
Yeah.
And the one area that I have yet to develop, but I'm been very encouraged to develop it, is the male of buyer, because soap is mostly bought by females. And
Okay.
when you do your business plan, you'll find that out. So it's really important to know who buys your product. But I've had many men come in this year and they're like, you know what? I will do a video for you. I will do whatever it takes because I love your products. I had this man come in the other day and he had bought a bar of my mechanic soap. And he's like, my hands have never been clean, not ever. And now they're clean, they're soft, they're not chapped, they're not anything. And I will tell anybody that. So I'm like, oh, wow. I'm going to put you on camera.
I was just going to say, you need to grab that testimonial, Shelley.
And that's a really good point, Joan, is that if you get testimonials, you must grab them. You must incorporate them into your business. And then the other piece of that marketing is that we all understand that we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on TikTok. Well, you can't be on everything. You have to choose what you're going to be on. But also know that any of your social media platforms, they don't really belong to you. So those platforms can be taken away from you. Like Instagram can be pulled out from underneath you at any time. So you work really hard to develop your followers, and the next day you've lost that profile, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. So it's really important to develop your email lists, to develop your contacts that are tangible, because even though we like to think that Instagram and TikTok belong to us, they don't.
Have you had that experience?
I've seen people have that experience. I personally haven't had that experience, but I've seen people have it. So the bottom line is build your email contacts, build your telephone contacts if that's how you do it, build your tangible contacts.
Right. And that's to say nothing too of the change in the algorithms.
Absolutely.
That are completely beyond our control.
That too.
How did you come up with the name of your business? Soapolallie.
Well, that was quite easy. So I've been picking Soapolallie berry for quite some time, and they're very high in vitamin C. And so when you're out in the forest, you can pick them and you can eat them. They're extremely bitter, but they have saponins in them. So the saponins can be whipped into ice cream. So that's Indian ice cream. So my aunt had a recipe, which I just do not think is very good for anybody. But this is how you make it. It's 75 berries and 2 cups of sugar.
Oh my.
And the berries are so small, but you whip that up and it forms a consistency of whipped cream. And that's a delicacy kind of thing after sugar came, I guess, at celebrations. And so it was really simple to take that Soapolallie, because the soup and soap is very interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
So neither of those words are indigenous to our language. They're a pidgin language, and referred to as that. So that it's Shushan in the Thompson dialect or in the Thompson language, and so I use that sometimes, but I just chose to go with the Soapolallie for all of those reasons, and it's meaningful to me.
The Soapolallie berry, does it make its way into any of your creations?
It does, and I use it as a colorant. I thought because it held saponins, I did lots of trials to see if it would perform some other way. And I didn't really notice a difference for performance like that, but it held a beautiful color. And anytime that you're working with natural colorant, most of the time the natural colorant fades in soaping.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just because of the chemical changes. But this, the Soapolallie berry, it doesn't fade.
Perfect.
So it worked for me.
Yeah.
And it gives me an opportunity to tell people about it and to talk to people about, some of the traditional pieces.
Where's the best place for our listeners to connect with you, Shelley?
Well, one of the best places is walk into my store if you can.
I highly recommend it. It looks beautiful.
I love this place, and I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to work in this space. I share every day with my grandmother. There's a photograph of my grandmother that I share with this space with her every day, and she is my inspiration. And I hope I'm speaking for her now, because we are Enkakatma from Spasm, and my grandmother denied her heritage. I didn't know what my heritage as I was growing up until I was about 20. And so she walked away from anything. She knew she had to. So she walked away from the culture, from the language, from the people, and never to be spoken about again until her later 20 years before she passed. We started talking about it because she became more open about it. And it gave her great pain to know what she'd done and the impact of what she'd done. So I'm a learner. I am an everyday learner. I'm studying the language. I'm learning about culture, and I am every day honoring her and what she had to give up to give a better life for her family. So I'm going to cry. And now I've forgotten your question, because I've kind of...
She's still with us on this planet? Physically?
She is not. So when your ancestors leave you and pass and walk over to the other side, they leave you, but they never leave you. So the photograph in my store is blurry, and it's blurred. And I chose that one because it's blurred, because it really signifies that she's here, but she's not here.
Yes. And her guidance is always available to you.
Always. And my whole life, that's been true. Even when she was physically walking on this earth, she always was beside me.
Well, Soapolallie was recently awarded Female Business of the Year by the All Nations Trust Company. Congratulations there, Shelley.
Thank you.
Clearly, you know how to take action and win awards. What's your best tip for an aspiring side hustle hero to start or to scale their venture?
To have a passion for it. Don't do it just because you can. Do it because you love it.
Well said. Thank you so much, Shelley, for sharing your insider tips on going from market to storefront, and for being today's side hustle hero.
Well, thank you for asking me. I was quite honored when I received the invitation.
You heard Shelley mention that her store sales have exceeded her expectations. And it's clear she's doing a lot of things right. But that didn't happen by accident. She worked on her business plan for 3 months. That's a big undertaking. When I wrote my business plan to purchase a self-storage facility, I did not have 3 months. But then again, I can be extremely efficient when there's a deadline. If you're launching something from your home space and not needing, say, a storefront, your plan doesn't have to be as extensive. But what working through a business plan will do is force you to consider all the major components that are going to contribute to the success of your side hustle. It'll cause you to think about goals, objectives, values, who your target market is, what their needs are, their pain points, information about your industry, your competition, how you're going to differentiate your product or service, and on and on. Marketing, Shelley told us, is not her strong suit. But the business plan caused her to take a deep dive into it and come up with a strategy which she's executing. And it's paying off. I hope you've got a big, beautiful vision of what you want your side hustle to grow into. If you're not already doing so, make sure that you're treating it now like the successful, lucrative business you want it to become. How? By having a plan and then checking progress. Have at least a quarterly review and planning session. Even if you're a solopreneur, set the date and time and make it a big deal. Have it off-site. You can go to a park, a nice coffee shop, or something more extravagant if it's in the budget. And of course, you've got a budget. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find a link to Shelley's Soapolallie Soapworks and the show notes on our website, sidehustleheropodcast.com. And I'd love to hear your feedback on the show, on the guests, how this podcast is helping you. What areas could we do better? Let me know how your quarterly review and planning session went. I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me an email message to hello@joanposivy.com or by DM on Instagram @JoanPosivy. Thanks for listening and hustle on.